Welcome back to Big Riff Energy. Today we're having some fun. We are going to roast and annihilate the weakest, lamest, most riffless, worst metal bands of all time. For the record, I don't consider any of these bands metal, really. And if you're a regular listener or viewer of the show, you probably don't either. But huge chunks of the normie population in metal press will refer to these as metal bands, so we're going to set them straight on that. But first, Saturday and Sunday, Austin Death Fest, downtown Austin at the Mohawk. Get your tickets. I think it's prekindle.com, and I'll see you there. Riffs will be in abundance at that one, and I'm planning on interviewing Outer Heaven, hopefully on the rooftop of the Hilton Hotel in the hot tub. That was their idea. Great idea. Going to try to make that happen. If you have questions for the mighty Outer Heaven, one of the finest death metal bands in existence, email me at bigriffenergy@gmail.com and I will ask them your questions. What else? Okay, before we get to the massacre of the Riffless, let's talk about some cool stuff. April has been a very abundant month and a very abundant year for Big Riff Energy. First up, we have Necrot with their new album, Lifeless Birth. I think this is the Bandcamp exclusive. It's half orange, half red. It's kind of translucent with black splatter. Looks awesome. Tank Crimes Records, shout out as always. Yeah, these guys have quite a solid catalog at this point. This is album number 3. And it took me a minute. I would have talked about this one sooner, but I sort of waited to order it because I'm going to be honest, I wasn't completely sold on the second single, Drill the Skull, which ironically, now that I've listened to the record a lot, that's the song that's getting stuck in my head the most. So what does that mean? But yeah, I checked it out when it came out, ended up buying it. I love the first record. I mean, I love all 3 records and everything they recorded before their first full length, but this might be my favorite. It's got some of their finest moments for sure. I love Necrot's vocals. Luca does a great job of being discernible and mixing up his range. You know, most of it's right in my favorite range for death metal vocals, sort of mid-range, higher pitch, but mostly mid-range. Not a lot of gutturals. You can tell, you can't understand every word. I mean, it's death metal, of course not. But you can at least tell that there's words being said. And there's hooks. There's vocal hooks and there's like lyrical hooks. The sound of the lyrics are very catchy, you know, anthemic almost. Necrot really has like a signature style of riffing at this point that's like walking the perfect line between headbanging stuff and like clever stuff. That's my favorite line, as you know, if you're a listener of this show. And some of the odd time signature stuff they do, throwing in a measure of 5 or 7 instead of your traditional measure of 4. They do that every once in a while. And it really reminds me of old Metallica. It's not quite as progressive and a rocket scientist as like the later death stuff or bands like Cynic or Atheist or, you know, super progressive death metal. That stuff a lot of times is like too much for me. They stray a little too far from the heaviness to be intelligent or interesting or whatever. Necrot does not do that. Their approach to being progressive is a lot more like some of the riffs on Master of Puppets or And Justice for All, that kind of thing. You know, they don't sacrifice the heaviness and the groove for the progressive mindedness. And I love that. I love when it's equally heavy and equally interesting. The drumming's phenomenal, as always. Sonny from Necrot has been one of my favorite guitarists for a while, and we've already discussed this. I think this is like maybe the best stuff he's ever done. Shout out to Sonny. Shout out to all these guys. All 3 dudes did such a great job on this record. The songs are killer. Cut the Cord and Superior are probably the highlights for me. Some of the guitar stuff on Superior is really like Andy LaRocque, like classic King Diamond. Yeah, it's like stuff you would hear on a more traditional melodic metal record. Some of it's even leaning into like rock and roll. Some of it's very tragic sounding. I told Sonny when the record came out, you know, it's a lot more emotionally impactful, and yeah, there's just a lot more emotion in the guitar than you're used to in most death metal. And I have to say, Necrot is one of the very few current death metal bands that still captivates my attention and excites me, and this could be their best record. So if you haven't heard it yet, check it out. I would say this is for fans of like the first wave of death metal, the New York and Florida stuff. Old Metallica, honestly, power trios, Motorhead. The thing that makes Necrot really stand out is like the rock and roll spirit that's in there beneath all the death metal brutality. There's a lot of fun happening. So, highly recommended. Next up on Monarch Records, we have the new High on Fire, Cometh the Storm. First single from this album got me really excited. Burning Down, it's track 2. This is going to be weird territory for me. I have to preface all this by saying I've spoken about it on this podcast before, but High on Fire might have been the first band that I ever got into as a kid that was like a current/new band. I got into them when they only had 2 records out, probably about 2002 or 3. The first record I ever pre-ordered in my life from the Relapse Records mail order catalog was Blessed Black Wings, the 3rd album. So I am a High on Fire lifer. I love everything they've ever done. I think they have one of the best catalogs in metal. I respect them, love the guys, everything they've done in High on Fire, out of High on Fire. Before I get to the music on this album, I got a damn bone to pick. I don't know if it's Monarch Heavy's fault or, you know, I noticed on the shipping label that they're using Downright Merch as their, I guess, fulfillment service in the US. I pre-ordered this thing the day that pre-orders went live, and it showed up after the release date. Unacceptable. What's the point in pre-ordering something if it shows up after everyone else is hearing it? You know, makes no sense. Also, there was some kind of promotional thing that they were doing like maybe a month or a few weeks after the pre-orders opened, where if you pre-order the album, you get an enamel pin. But I guess if you pre-ordered it before that, you don't get the pin. Get your shit together. This is typical like bigger label stuff. Yeah, kind of a joke, man. So that sort of put a bad taste in my mouth. But all those things aside, obviously the guys in High on Fire have absolutely nothing to do with that. I like this record. You know, I think the strengths of the record lie in the moments where they're channeling maybe the early High on Fire stuff, like the first 3-4 albums. There's stuff that reminds me of that. There's moments, especially in the last song, the intro to the last song, that remind me of Dope Smoker, Sleep, which is one of my favorite things Matt Pike's ever done. But, you know, once the intro is over, that song very obviously becomes a High on Fire song. I would say that's a high point of the album for sure. Some of the experimentation that's going on, you know, they're trying new things. The title track is sort of like a new vibe for them. And there's, what's the song? The Beating, going into a little bit of like Voivod, more angular territory. But some of the experimentation, I'm not sure if I'm digging it, to be honest. On the other hand, some of the experimentation that they're doing with like the really Turkish influence stuff, especially the little interlude that's pretty much all Jeff Matz, you know, playing traditional Turkish music for the most part, but kind of in the style of High on Fire, if that is possible. I like that a lot. Some of the other experimentation, there's like almost more melodic singing and different kind of guitar harmonies than you would usually hear from High on Fire. I'm not quite sure that I'm digging it. The album's about an hour long. I kind of, at this point in my life, prefer 40, 45 minutes. And I honestly think if this album was 40, 45 minutes, it would be stronger. And there's different philosophies on that. You know, you can read interviews with Peter Steele from Typo Negative, where his reasoning was like, well, the labels are charging $20 for a CD, no matter how much music is on it. So we're going to try to give our fans as much music as possible. I appreciate that, but both as a fan and as a creator of music, I kind of prefer these days to err on the side of less material and guaranteed higher quality from start to finish, rather than more material and running the risk of getting a little aimless or monotonous, you know? I don't know if I would call the new High on Fire album monotonous. I wouldn't call it that, but I don't know. I think I just have to listen to it more. I will say, if it is their weakest album, and I'm not quite sure I'm prepared to call it their weakest album, it might be, but if it is, it's still better than most bands' best album. So I still love High on Fire, and that'll never change. Whether or not this album grows on me or not, I think they have one of the strongest discographies. And BRPM, big riffs per minute, definitely up there, all-timers. I'm going to talk about another couple of new records that came out. Not my usual cup of tea, but somebody on here recommended this one from New Jersey, Replicant. The album is Infinite Mortality. It's on Transcending Obscurity Records. This is for fans of, I want to say, like the new Job for a Cowboy, which also isn't my cup of tea, but I have to admit or acknowledge at the very least that that is like a phenomenal record for what it is. You know, if you like that style of music, I don't think it gets better than that. And I would put these guys in a similar category, you know, very angular, dissonant, mathy. There's parts that sort of remind me of Meshuggah. I really don't have a frame of reference for super technical, brutal. I don't want to call it metalcore because to me that's a dirty word, but it's in that territory, you know. My only frame of reference for gent or something like that is Meshuggah, because why would you listen to any other band like that? They're the best. They're way better than any other band that's ever done it. I think that's indisputable. So I would compare these guys a little bit to Meshuggah. Gorod, who put out a great record last year, The Orb, that I really loved. Reminiscent of that a little bit. Lots of dynamics. The end of the first song is one of my favorite moments that I've heard in extreme music in a long time. Just a lot of gnarly bass and drum groove with complete psychedelic overload going on with both guitars. Just dissonant, like you're trying to break out of the Matrix or something. It's a great record, man. I got to mention the vocals specifically, legitimately unhinged sounding, doing a lot of stuff that's wrong because it's the most powerful possible thing he could do. You know, his voice is like gargling and breaking up and moaning and grunting. They're just doing all kinds of really psychotic sounding vocal tricks, which fits the music really well. So yeah, not the type of stuff I would normally listen to, but you cannot deny greatness, even if it's not your preferred style of music. So thanks to, I think it was Shredword who shouted out Replicant, Infinite Mortality. And last one, this is a whole different end of the big riff spectrum. Whores, WHORES, with the album War. These guys are channeling a certain slice of the 90s big riff energy contingency. It's, again, not really a style that I'm that well versed in, but I'm going to say it's like that world of Melvins, like the riffiest, most accessible end of the Melvin spectrum. Helmet, Unsane, maybe even like early Clutch up to and including the first record. So when they were a lot noisier and heavier, you know, a little more dissonant and weird and avant-garde almost. Yeah, all that kind of stuff. Prong, you know, real simple, straightforward sledgehammer riffs. Great vocals, man. The guy's singing, but he has a lot of distortion on his voice in the mix. The production in general is incredible. And there's vocal harmonies. There's a lot of vocal harmonies. And yeah, it reminds me sort of, you know, Big Business and Melvin's style harmonies, just very weird, simple vocal melodies with a lot of weird harmonies on them, you know, very emotional. Yeah, super heavy production. A lot of it, again, is very drum and bass driven, and the guitars will be doing like noisy stuff and things that sort of resemble solos, but it's just more kind of expressive, emotional, scary stuff, you know, great song titles. Where is it? Back When I Was a Savage. These song titles is like stuff you would hear somebody say on a completely out of it day on tour, you know, Quitter's Fight Song. Every Day is Leg Day. Yeah, this is fun stuff. I could see these guys like on MTV with a music video being roasted by Beavis and Butthead back in like 1996 or something. It's right from that little slice of 90s big riff energy. And it's great, man. Very, very good. I've been seeing these guys' name, and we've been kind of running in the same circles for years, and I've heard them here and there, but I'm glad I finally checked out a full record because it is great. So that's Horrors with War. Check it out. That's on This Ghost is Clear Records or something. The Ghost is Clear Records.bandcamp.com. There you have it. So April was a pretty good month for riffs, man. And here we go. Let's talk about the worst metal bands of all time. Are you ready? This is going to be so much fun. Number 1, negativity bias, also known as the negativity effect, is a cognitive bias that even when positive or neutral things of equal intensity occur, things of a more negative nature, e.g., unpleasant thoughts, emotions, or social interactions, have a greater effect on one's psychological state and processes than neutral or positive things. In other words, something very positive will generally have less of an impact on a person's behavior and cognition than something equally emotional but negative. The negativity bias has been investigated within many different domains, including the formation of impressions and general evaluations, attention, which is relevant to this, learning, memory, decision-making, and risk considerations. So in this situation, it would mean you are more likely to click on a YouTube video with a negative title than you are a positive title. So yeah, that band sucks. No riffs. Number 2 worst metal band of all time, Clickbait, also known as link bait, is a text or a thumbnail link that is designed to attract attention and to entice users to follow that link and read, view, or listen to the linked piece of online content, being typically deceptive, sensationalized, or otherwise misleading. So yeah, not a very good metal band, Clickbait. Number 3, polarization. In particular, pernicious polarization. Perniciously polarized societies often witness public controversies over factually provable questions. During this process, facts and moral truths increasingly lose their weight as more people conform to the message of their own bloc. Social and political actors such as journalists, academics, and politicians either become engaged in partisan storytelling or else incur growing social, political, and economic costs. Electorates lose confidence in public institutions. Support and riffers lose confidence in riff authorities. Support for norms and democracy decline, it becomes increasingly difficult for people to act in a morally principled fashion by appealing to the truth or acting in line with one's values when it conflicts with one's party's interests. Once pernicious polarization takes hold, it takes on a life of its own, regardless of earlier intentions. Number 4, worst metal band of all time, Falling in Reverse. No, I kid. You get the point here. If you're a regular viewer of this show, this doesn't apply to you. Thank you for watching. But I'm conducting an experiment here. Let's say you clicked on this because of the thumbnail. You're assuming I was going to rip apart some of these controversial but very popular bands. A lot of people argue about the bands in the thumbnail as to whether they're metal or not. Some of the bands in the thumbnail I actually really like. So if you're new to the channel and you saw the title and thumbnail and you felt like a little bit of anger, you felt yourself getting defensive, you felt your blood pressure rising, I'm going to assume you're probably doing that all day. That's got to be exhausting. If you clicked on this and you skipped all the cool stuff I talked about to get to the end so that you could get mad and argue, go back to the beginning and let's focus on stuff that rules. You know, it's a better way of living. Let's not argue and bicker and fight over what we don't like. That's exhausting. This channel is not that. And I'm sorry if I tricked you. But if you want to hear about cool metal that you might actually like, that might actually bring some joy into your life, subscribe to this channel. Even worse, dude, if you just didn't watch this and you dropped a comment telling me what an asshole I am or I'm wrong and you know, just based on the clickbait, God have mercy on your soul, man. Light these fools up in the comments section. And this experiment might not even work. The algorithms are getting pretty good. YouTube like automatically detects all the words that I'm saying, so they might shut down my little bait and switch here. But, you know, I like these little social experiments. And the point of this channel is to build a little community that shares a love of big riff energy. The point of this channel is not to argue and bicker and complain, because there is an overabundance of that shit in our society today. So subscribe to this channel. If you clicked on this video to get into an argument, sorry to disappoint you, but man, there's like, we'll see what the views do on this video. And it's going to be real sad if it gets a lot more than usual. It might not, but it's worth experimenting to find out, I think. But if it does, man, I got 50 plus episodes talking about awesome riffs and stuff. So go back through those and find out about a new band that might become your new favorite band. That's it, man. I love big riffs. I don't have any interest in complaining or talking shit. But every once in a while, I still will. All right. See you next week or at Austin Death Fest. Peace out.